Our next session is with Ralph Mercer. Ralph, I can see you here. Maybe do a quick mic check. And the session is called Embracing the Weird, the Technology Culturalist Approach as a Liminal Space for Fostering Post-Humanist Futures.
What a pretentious title.
Great title.
Yeah. How's the mic check? Is that working all right?
Sounds great. Thanks.
Okay.
So just a little bit of housekeeping before you get started.
Yeah.
The session is being recorded. By default, in this particular session, everybody has the ability to talk. We can turn that off because it's typically not that way. So Ralph will leave that up to you.
No, you can leave it on.
Okay, great. And also, comments and questions can, as always, be entered into the chat or into the Q&A pod. And I believe we have a host here to help facilitate things along. Please do shout if you need anything.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so I guess I'm up then.
You're up.
I suppose when you have a title that's that long and got all those fancy words in it, I think I should give you a little bit of context of where it came from. The talk itself and probably the abstract that fueled it came from a longer research journey that I'm on right now. I'm looking at constructing a series of articles on how new philosophy approaches will impact traditional future studies and practices. I think what started the talk for sure was one of the first sentences I wrote in that notebook, I guess, if you wish, is the future must be a form of resistance, struggling against the limitations of our present mode of thinking. And I think that's what drove the underlying approach to weird and post-humanism and a number of other issues. And it also serves as a great opening for this talk. It highlights without the constant challenges to our own self-interest, the future becomes very much narrows and becomes homogenized and structured, if you wish. We lose the creativity with it without challenging it all the
time. Ralph, if I may, do you have a screen to share? Or
no, I'm just gonna.
Okay.
It's such a short time, and by the time you flash up slides and muck about with that, and it also keeps me from talking to them.
Okay.
So I mean,
really.
Also during the process here, if something jumps out at you, if you're listening to this, feel free to raise your hand and I'll stop. I'm not hardwired to any specific text or anything like that. I mean, really the intent, although this talk is sort of rooted in an incomplete academic journey, I guess, the intent here was to share that part of the journey with you and let you come along for, I guess, 26 minutes and expose you sort of the framework of the liminal spaces and weird research. The images of the future, I guess, are driven by a relationship with technology. For many people, technology is just a tool, but for a post-humanist and a tech culturalist, which that's what I deemed or annotated myself with, the essence of technology is to be a trait of the human. And it reveals, as Martin Heidegger said, what makes us human is very much technology is rooted in that whole process of evolution and getting us from the birth of the human race all the way through to now. But however, as with all things, our conception of what it means to be human is in dire need of an update. Really not just for the welfare of humanity, but also for the health of our planet. And it's also my belief, and I guess as a post-humanist and for others, my belief is that there is more to being human than just that what our present humanism ideologies permit. Which sort of got me around to Brock University's Weird Research Manifesto. In the spring of, I guess, 2022, there was a group formed at Brock University in Canada, and they built this Weird Research Manifesto. And it's fairly easily researched or Googled, so I'm not going to bother spending a lot of time reading through it. But the activity itself is what caught my eye. The research manifesto sort of fell under the banner of how to think new thoughts. And the premise was that embracing a weird research gives us permission to tackle difficult and subversive questions, breaks us free of the stakeholders and the constraints and those sort of practices. It highlights the need of those liminal spaces between conventional practices, but that are born of conventional thinking, and opportunities for new modes of change in thinking itself. The non-conforming idea of weird research offers us a latitude for working past disciplinary conventions and exploring methods that are often deemed not acceptable in a normal standard, especially in some of the formal magazines and those sort of things. And while weird research, as I'm sort of proposing it here, is not intended to replace conventional research, but it does open opportunities to produce results that conventional research might not. And from those results, they may be incomplete, but they offer better ways to ask the questions. And they're not always looking for an answer, they're looking for a path to finding alternate solutions. It's often been called research is out of sync, but it's out of sync from the idea of gatekeepers and stakeholders and professional comfort zones. And that is a healthy thing for any type of process that works from a subjective practice like future studies. That out of sync also allows us to reconceptualize how we work around the liminal space idea. Excuse me. Liminal spaces, I thought, was a really interesting idea. I mean, as a metaphor, they are almost like a precipice. You stand on the edge of your own way of thinking, and then you have to take the leap of faith to release you, if you wish, from the way we thought towards the way we grow. And from these ideas grow the never-ending cycle. I mean, the traditional ways of thinking that we've become ingrained in becomes a very never-ending cycle of producing futures that are adjacent, not alternate. And they are built on the processes that we already have in place. And to escape that, that precipice idea allows us to introduce things like weird, exciting, messy, alternative modes of thinking that are uncomfortable. And the liminal space, this doesn't offer a location of introspection, but offers an opportunity to start afresh. It's also an area that we can deconstruct our beliefs, both in practices and ideologies. It is in these liminal spaces, the in-between, the old and the new, that we can now address the uncertainties and the ambiguities of, incentivizing and ambiguities and often discomfort, but it becomes a location of intellectual reconstruction, the safe location to explore those subversive questions, which has always been, the questions about what has always been true, accepted, and ingrained in our habits and practices and beliefs. However, without those type of challenges, we would never be able to, and the liminal space provides the top cover, if you wish, to allow us to question things we are afraid to ask. And I think that's a healthy thing. So, and which brings me back to the larger research project that I'm on, and there's some questions in there that I'm sort of exploring, and I'll sort of highlight them now. I'll give you some context of where I've been going with the idea of the liminal questions and those. Um, and one of the top questions I ask is, what does the future look like if the human is not the unit of measurement? From now, almost all our futurist activities are for a uh, species humans to be somewhere in the future, 5, 20, 25, 50,000 years. And we try to imagine what it'll be like or what we would like to see in that time frame. But the unit of measurement never changes. So therefore, very little of our futures can really change, even though we're doing some very interesting activities. If we're always using the ruler of inches, we're always going to have something in the yard. And what happens to our collective and individual visions of the future when we acknowledge that human agency is co-constructed, mainly through technology, but also the environment around us? Where does that happen when we accept the fact that we are not sovereign over our own agency and we don't have dominion over what we do? And what happens when we understand that technology reveals what the essence of being human? It's very much an amplifier of who we are as an individual and also as a species. So those are sort of the three questions that are driving this larger research project, again, sort of filtered into this article. No, into this talk. So I'm going to touch briefly on philosophical posthumanism. That's sort of the driving philosophy ideology for this. A little bit on tech culturalism coming up. And then, depending on the time I have left after that, I'll either open up the floor questions or fill in some more details. But I think it's important to realize that from the posthumanist perspective of my research and this talk is the term posthumanism is very much that post and humanism. It is anti-humanism, but it is not post-human or anti-human. That this vein of thinking does not ultimately end in singularity. We're uploaded to the cloud servers, if you wish. It's very much that the human takes responsibility and becomes part of the technology journey, much as we have from the beginning of time. It rejects dualism also. I mean, the whole thinking of us and them, winners and losers, to bring on a new thought process, we have to jettison an old one. The other parts of this thinking is also that technology is a trait of the human assembly, not the sole focus of the journey or the human, but part of the co-constituting the lifestyle and evolution of thinking is part of us. Like the clothes we wear, the air we breathe, it is always ambient to us. And it's active. It's not unseeing, but it's definitely active. And lastly, philosophical posthumanism is very much a post-Anthropocene thought process. It drops the responsibility of this problem directly into the human space. There is no shuffling it off or questioning it. It is something that we must take the responsibility to fix. You hear a lot of discussion in posthumanism about decentering the human. And it is very much the idea of taking future studies from a very vertical hierarchy where the human is the unit of measurement at the top and flattening it out. That we share the ability, if you wish, with the environment around us, the planets and the other species, and less than human, more than human, and that sort of process. But it does not absolve the human from the responsibility of what is going on around them and to take ownership of that. The idea of culturalism when I did a little bit of research, there's nobody else calling themselves a tech culturalist. So I guess it's a made-up word that I use, but it very much falls out of posthumanism. And the main driving factor is it allows me to explore the relationship between technology and the human. It challenges the worldview of technology as a tool. It also challenges that litany of the technology is going to take our world or benefit from us or destroy the planet. I mean, those litanies of us and them is destroyed through the idea of the posthuman and tech culturalism. Technology, then, from that perspective, is part of the human experience rather than something that we should be struggling against or with. And it's not the sole focus. This becomes part of the everyday thinking that we must go about. And it very much as it becomes part of our assembly or part of our daily lives, it becomes part of our personal responsibilities. And it changes very much to being able to say, as long as we keep technology as other, we can also pass that other responsibility on to somebody else. And let me just open this up. So, I mean, just sort of a recap, I got a couple of minutes, and then I'll open it up to any questions that you might have. The liminal concept envisioned in this talk is a space to shed one's way of thinking from the current human-centric models or modes of thinking to one guided by posthumanism. Liminal space here is, very much, like I said, a metaphor of a precipice, but it's also a metaphor of transformation from humanism to posthumanism. And for a way of thinking, humanism as a position in this discussion is defined by the tendency to confront dualism woven into our narratives, litanies, and winners and losers, and the human as a sole owner of agency. Under posthumanism and tech culturalism, these boundaries destabilize and blur and reconfigure as we go through that liminal space. That in-betweenness of the liminal space provokes us to rethink subjectivity, ethics, values in a more inclusive and distributed manner, if you wish. And the research that's deemed weird by our colleagues or stakeholders, just because it doesn't fit necessarily into the disciplinary boundaries that we're used to seeing. However, that weird research is very much liberating and freeing researchers to explore areas and not necessarily find an answer, but find better ways to explore. The answer is not always at the end of every journey. All the times, it's just another door that we can open up and go through. The liminal spaces are just, I think for me and posthumanism offers that place to shift what we believe in, to start thinking about new modes of thinking, and to ultimately question, I think I'll end on this, ultimately question the ingrained, acceptable, common sense practices and beliefs that we use every day in our futurist or research world. When you come up against something like that, you go, yeah, that's awesome. That's just, you don't even think about it. That's where we should be stopping and starting to question what we could be doing with that and where the openings are and how the future changes if we were to poke a stick at that area and have a look inside. And I think I've got 10 minutes left, and that's what they sort of showed for questions. So if anybody does have any questions out there, all ears and I'm willing to go.
Right, it's time for questions. Thanks, Ralph. So
Yep.
Paula, go ahead, please.
Hi, Ralph. This is Paula from Ontario. I'm I'm also here in Canada in Ontario, not far from Toronto. My question for you has to do with your notions of liminal spaces for growth and transformation of the general population as opposed to the individual. And where does free will fit into this notion of, a mass label of posthumanism, when not necessarily everyone will want to embrace this notion of technology as being part and parcel of themselves as opposed to an externalized tool. There are many modes of thinking whereby people are at the center of civilization as well, or symbiosis with nature, but not everyone believes that technology is also part of nature, even though it is a human construct, and it is, many people believe it's part of it's for our benefit, as opposed to being an integrated part of our person or self. So where does, in all of that sort of muddled question, where does free will fit into your thesis?
I think free will is at the it's a nexus point. To change anything, liminal space in itself is not a transformation. It is a gateway. You begin, you need probably three things to change. You need a desire or a catalyst. You need to understand what you believe in the present. And well, I guess four things. What you believe in the present, a mode of thinking that you can now transition to, that it's a choice. I mean, nobody shoves you into this metaphorical liminal space and pop you at the other end thinking differently. It is a choice that you must make to change that thinking. And then when you exit out, it is very much having the ability to reconstruct your thoughts and to believe in something. When you talk about people uncomfortable with the idea, well, I mean, yes, I'm still uncomfortable with the idea. I know from day one we were told we have dominion over the world. For most of a lot of the worldviews and metaphors and religions and cultures look that way about it. There are some that don't, and we can learn from them. But for the most part, we see the world as a form of natural resource to insulate us from having to deal with the nature. And it's got us this far. I just do not believe it will get us where we need to be in the 22nd century. But back to your idea of free will, I think very much I think the posthumanism thought process, tech culturalism, or neo-humanism even, needs to enter the dialogue of research and in the dialogue of academics and the dialogue of everyday life. And that will start to grow the whole idea. I don't believe this is an on and off switch thing, but it needs to be discussed. By fact of not discussing it, we're actually hiding it, those opportunities. And I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, Paula.
Yes, and for the most part, although I do think that there needs to be left open the possibilities that you will have great swaths of people who opt out of that nomenclature and opt out of that system of being, self-incorporation with technology. I personally still don't know how I feel about that, although I can say with good certainty that if I were to become ill and that technology were the best way for me to obtain a certain amount of motility or better quality of life, then I would be very apt to choose it. But I don't know that everyone else would. And so I just think, when placing labels on the next version of our humanity in history, the caveat is that there will be great swaths of people who choose not to do that. and choose not to be labeled that way.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, I'm going to add something onto that, and I probably should have made more point of it in the discussion. I don't see technology either. I think the natural evolution of technology may take us someplace where I have an implant and all those sort of things, but that is not the goal of the philosophical posthumanism. And the goal is to make us start thinking about that technology as part of what we do every day. And that's been part of our evolutionary process from the day we first, picked up the stick in the ground and bash something in the head. I mean, that as a process, and take responsibility for that process. And as long as we think of it as a technology, as a tool, a thing other like a hammer or a ladder, we can absolve ourselves as somebody else's problem. They have to build safety guidelines like the AI discussion. Well, the AI discussion is a non-issue. Really, if you absolve yourselves of the AI making that decision for you, well then, I mean, that's your free will. The other part, I think we also already do that. The majority of the population travels where Google Maps tell them to travel. They no longer have that free will. They just type it in, take me to the conference, and it routes you. So we already, when you talk to people in a conference area or in the building, they used to crowd around the coffee shop and the smoke room, and now they crowd around where the Wi-Fi signal is fast or free. So it's already modifying our behaviors and doing stuff that we're not conscious about anyways. But I take your point and I agree with it. And the last part is the nomenclature of posthumanism. It's something that through the process of this research I'm on, I'm hoping to find another way to describe it. The post carries so much weight of the past, if you wish, of how we use it and what it means, and it's very much an umbrella term. It's tied up with transhumanism and a bunch of other singularities. So yeah, it does need cleaning up, and that's part of this journey.
What about neo-humanism?
I mean, that has roots in Sarkar, and it's an amazing process. I think the only thing his thinking and that how that all rolls along is it still anchors itself with the human as the unit of measurement. And I think to make the radical changes and the immediate changes that we need to do in the next number of years is we have to be able to push that envelope a little bit. And that's the difference for me right now, because if you read, the Sarkar's, original neo-humanism next to post-humanism, there's a lot of similarities there.
Thanks a lot. So time is over. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Ralph. It was great to have you here.
Thank you. Sorry for monopolizing the time.
Don't worry, we are just in time.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if anybody want to carry on the conversation offline, I believe my email address is available to everybody, and have a great evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you might be.